There comes a moment in life when everything feels heavy, the plans fail, the relationships shift, the confidence disappears, and the person you once were starts feeling distant. Most people think the breakdown is the end of the story. But what if the breakdown is actually the beginning of transformation? Because when everything falls apart, something important is revealed. You discover what was holding you together in the first place. Many people build their identity around success, approval, routine, or certainty, and when those things disappear, they feel lost. Not because they are weak, but because they attach their worth to things that were never permanent. The emotional reset begins the moment you accept that life will not always go according to plan. You stop resisting reality. You stop wasting energy wishing things were different. And instead you begin asking a more powerful question: who do I need to become because of this? That question changes everything. Pain has a strange way of exposing truth. It reveals the people who truly care about you. It reveals the habits that were silently destroying your peace. It reveals the fears you kept hiding behind distractions. And most importantly, it reveals whether your foundation was built on purpose or comfort. Most people wait for motivation before they move forward, but emotionally strong people understand something different. Action creates clarity. Small movement creates emotional momentum. You do not need to rebuild your whole life in one night. You only need the courage to take one step when your mind tells you to quit. The problem is that during emotional collapse, people isolate themselves inside their own thoughts. They replay failure, they replay rejection, they replay fear until it becomes their identity. But thoughts repeated long enough begin to feel like facts even when they are lies. That is why your environment matters. The voices you listen to matter. The energy you allow into your life matters. You cannot emotionally reset while constantly feeding your mind negativity. And here is what many people never realize. Healing is not just rest. Healing is rebuilding trust with yourself, keeping promises to yourself again, waking up when you said you would, taking care of your body when your emotions tell you not to, continuing even when nobody notices. Because confidence is not built by motivation. Confidence is built by evidence. Evidence that you can survive difficult moments without giving up on yourself. Some of the strongest people in the world once sat alone questioning everything. They doubted themselves, they felt broken, they felt emotionally exhausted, but they made one decision that changed their future. They refuse to let temporary pain become a permanent identity. Your hardest season can either become your excuse or your awakening. And often the emotional collapse happens because life is forcing you to outgrow an old version of yourself. The old mindset cannot carry the future you want. The old habits cannot produce new results. The old environment cannot support new growth. So life creates discomfort to force transformation. That discomfort is not punishment, it is preparation. The people who rise after emotional devastation are not the people who avoid pain. They are the people who learn how to use pain as fuel. They stop asking for an easier life and start building a stronger mindset. They stop waiting for perfect conditions and start creating discipline inside imperfect circumstances. Because eventually you realize something powerful. Your life changes the moment your identity changes. The moment you decide that setbacks will train you instead of destroy you, everything begins shifting internally. And internal change always comes before external results. The world outside reflects the standards, beliefs, and emotional strength built within. So if everything feels like it is falling apart right now, remember this. Sometimes life removes stability to reveal purpose. Sometimes isolation teaches self-respect. Sometimes failure develops resilience. And sometimes the collapse is necessary because the person you are becoming cannot grow inside the life you used to live. This is not the end of your story. This is the moment you rebuild with deeper purpose, stronger discipline, clearer vision, and a mindset that no longer depends on comfort to survive. Pain is not proof that your life is over. It is proof that change is demanding a new version of you. The strongest people are not the ones who avoided suffering. They are the ones who allowed suffering to reshape their mindset, rebuild their character, and redefine their purpose. Every difficult season carries a hidden invitation to grow beyond the person you used to be. Most people resist that invitation because pain feels unfamiliar, uncomfortable, and deeply personal. But discomfort has always been part of transformation. Nothing evolves without pressure. Nothing strengthens without resistance. The greatest breakthroughs in human history were born during periods of uncertainty, struggle, and emotional exhaustion. When life falls apart, people often believe they are losing everything. In reality, they are losing the illusion of control they once depended on. Careers change, relationships collapse, plans fail, confidence disappears, and suddenly the identity that felt secure begins to crack under pressure. But identity built only on external success was never stable to begin with. Real strength begins when your mindset becomes stronger than your circumstances. That is why pain can become one of the most powerful teachers in life. It forces reflection, it forces honesty, it forces growth that comfort could never produce. Many people spend years avoiding emotional discomfort through distractions. They stay busy so they never have to face themselves. They chase approval so they never feel rejected. They cling to routines that keep them safe but never fulfilled. Then one difficult moment arrives and exposes everything they tried to hide. That moment feels like destruction, but often it is revelation. It reveals weak habits, unresolved fears, emotional dependency, and the absence of purpose. The breakdown becomes a mirror showing exactly where change is necessary. Growth begins the moment you stop asking why pain entered your life and start asking what pain is trying to teach you. That shift changes your entire perspective. Victims search for escape. Leaders search for meaning. Emotionally strong people understand that suffering can either create wisdom or bitterness depending on how it is interpreted. The challenge is not simply surviving hard seasons. The challenge is becoming better through them. Every setback contains information. Failure teaches preparation. Rejection teaches self-worth. Isolation teaches independence. Uncertainty teaches resilience. Pressure teaches focus. The people who eventually succeed are rarely the people who had easy lives. They are the people who learned how to remain disciplined while emotionally exhausted. They kept moving while carrying doubt. They kept building while feeling broken internally. That is where real confidence is created. Not in comfort, but in perseverance. Human beings are capable of adapting to extraordinary hardship. History repeatedly proves that individuals can recover from devastating losses and still create meaningful lives afterward. Psychological research continues to show that resilience is not fixed at birth. It develops through repeated exposure to challenge, combined with the decision to continue forward. Emotional endurance operates like a muscle. The more resistance it faces, the stronger it becomes over time. The version of you that survives pain with wisdom is more powerful than the version of you that never struggled at all. Because strength built through adversity creates depth, clarity, discipline, and perspective that comfort can never provide. Pain strips away illusions. It removes distractions. It forces you to confront the truth about your habits, your mindset, your relationships, and your purpose. And once truth is revealed, transformation becomes possible. People break emotionally when they lose meaning, not just when they face failure. Failure alone is rarely what destroys a person. Human beings can survive rejection, hardship, pressure, and painful setbacks when they still believe their struggle has purpose. What truly exhausts the mind is the feeling that the pain means nothing. When purpose disappears, energy disappears with it. Motivation fades. Discipline weakens. Hope becomes difficult to hold on to. That is why reconnecting to purpose matters more than chasing immediate results. Results can inspire temporarily, but purpose sustains people during the darkest seasons of life. Many individuals spend years pursuing goals they've never deeply connected to emotionally. They chase money because society rewards it. They chase recognition because approval feels validating. They chase status because comparison makes them feel behind. Yet even after achieving certain milestones, they still feel empty internally. The reason is simple. Achievement without meaning creates temporary satisfaction but not lasting fulfillment. Human beings are not designed to survive only on external rewards. They need a reason powerful enough to carry them through struggle. Purpose gives suffering direction. Without direction, pain feels random and unbearable. A person working endlessly for validation eventually becomes emotionally drained because validation constantly disappears and must be earned again. But a person connected to a meaningful mission can endure extraordinary difficulty because their effort serves something larger than temporary emotions. History consistently shows that individuals who survive immense adversity are often those who possess a clear sense of meaning behind their actions. They understand why they continue even when conditions become painful. Modern life often disconnects people from purpose without them realizing it. Endless distractions create noise. Social media creates comparison. Constant consumption creates emotional numbness. People become busy but not fulfilled. They move quickly without understanding where they are truly going. Then when failure arrives, they collapse emotionally because their identity was attached only to outcomes. When the outcome disappears, they no longer know who they are. Purpose creates internal stability during external instability. A person connected to purpose does not avoid disappointment, but disappointment no longer defines their identity. Temporary setbacks stop feeling permanent because the mission remains larger than the obstacle. This mindset changes how adversity is interpreted. Challenges become training instead of punishment. Delays become preparation instead of defeat. Hardship becomes part of the journey instead of evidence that the journey should end. Research in psychology repeatedly demonstrates that meaning plays a critical role in emotional endurance and resilience. People who believe their actions contribute to something valuable are more likely to persist through stress, recover from setbacks, and maintain long-term discipline. The human mind needs significance as much as it needs certainty. When meaning disappears, emotional exhaustion increases because effort no longer feels connected to anything worthwhile. That is why reconnecting to purpose should always come before chasing results. Results fluctuate constantly. Some seasons bring progress, while others bring disappointment. If emotional stability depends entirely on outcomes, confidence becomes fragile and inconsistent. But purpose creates consistency even during uncertainty. It reminds people why they started before success ever arrived. It keeps discipline alive when motivation fades. It creates emotional endurance strong enough to survive criticism, rejection, failure, and doubt. Purpose is not always discovered in dramatic moments. Sometimes it emerges quietly through responsibility, service, growth, or personal transformation. Sometimes purpose begins when pain forces reflection. Difficult seasons often remove distractions and expose what truly matters. They reveal what kind of life feels meaningful and what kind feels empty. Emotional breakdowns frequently become turning points because they force people to reevaluate what they are living for. The strongest individuals are not necessarily the most talented or the most successful. They are often the people who possess clarity about why they continue moving forward despite difficulty. Purpose transforms endurance into strength. It transforms suffering into growth. It transforms ordinary effort into something powerful enough to survive even the hardest seasons of life. Strength is not pretending to be okay. Strength is choosing to move forward while carrying uncertainty. Many people misunderstand what emotional strength truly looks like. They believe strong individuals never feel fear, doubt, confusion, or exhaustion. They assume resilience means having constant confidence and perfect emotional control. But real strength has never been the absence of struggle. Real strength is the decision to continue despite internal chaos. It is waking up with unanswered questions and still choosing responsibility. It is carrying pressure without allowing pressure to destroy your identity. Human beings naturally search for certainty because certainty creates comfort. People want guarantees before they take risks. They want clarity before they move forward. They want reassurance before they commit to change. Yet life rarely provides certainty during the moments that matter most. The future remains unknown. Outcomes remain unpredictable. Relationships shift. Opportunities disappear. Plans fail unexpectedly. And during those moments, uncertainty begins testing emotional endurance. Many individuals freeze emotionally because they believe uncertainty means danger. They interpret confusion as weakness and fear as failure. But uncertainty is not proof that you are lost. Often uncertainty is evidence that growth is happening. Every meaningful transformation in life requires stepping into situations without complete control. No person begins a new chapter with total confidence. Athletes entering competition feel uncertainty. Entrepreneurs building companies feel uncertainty. Leaders making difficult decisions feel uncertainty. Even people pursuing healing and personal growth experience uncertainty because change always involves unfamiliar territory. Pretending to be okay creates emotional exhaustion because it forces people to hide their reality instead of processing it honestly. Society often rewards appearances over authenticity. People feel pressure to look strong even while struggling internally. They suppress emotions, ignore stress, and convince themselves that vulnerability equals weakness. But unresolved emotions eventually surface in destructive ways. Emotional suppression can create burnout, anxiety, isolation, and loss of identity over time. True emotional resilience begins with honesty. Honest people acknowledge fear without surrendering to it. They recognize pain without allowing pain to control their future. They admit uncertainty while continuing to take action. This balance creates psychological strength because courage is not the removal of fear. Courage is movement despite fear. The strongest individuals are often not fearless at all. They simply refuse to let fear make their decisions for them. Research in behavioral psychology repeatedly shows that resilience develops through exposure to manageable adversity combined with adaptive action. Human beings become emotionally stronger not by avoiding difficult situations, but by learning they can survive them. Confidence grows through evidence. Every time a person faces uncertainty and continues forward, the brain gradually builds greater tolerance for discomfort and unpredictability. Emotional endurance expands through repeated experiences of persistence under pressure. Life consistently tests this principle. There are moments when no perfect answer exists, moments when progress feels invisible, moments when people must continue working, leading, healing, or rebuilding without immediate proof that things will improve. Those seasons reveal character more than comfortable seasons ever could. Anybody can remain positive when life feels easy. Emotional strength is measured by the ability to maintain direction during instability. Some of the most powerful personal transformations begin during uncertain seasons. Uncertainty forces adaptation. It removes false security and challenges old identities. It pushes people beyond familiar habits and familiar thinking. Although uncomfortable, these experiences often develop wisdom, resilience, patience, and self-awareness that certainty never could have created. The desire for complete certainty often keeps people trapped in lives they have already outgrown. They delay decisions waiting for perfect timing. They avoid opportunities because success is not guaranteed. They remain emotionally stuck because uncertainty feels threatening. But growth always requires stepping into unknown territory. No meaningful future can be built entirely inside the boundaries of comfort. Strength is continuing the journey even while carrying unanswered questions. It is remaining disciplined while emotionally tired. It is protecting hope while facing setbacks. It is refusing to surrender identity during difficult seasons. Real resilience is not loud. Often it looks quiet and invisible. It looks like persistence when nobody notices. It looks like effort without applause. It looks like rebuilding confidence one difficult day at a time while uncertainty still surrounds the path ahead. Your environment shapes your recovery. The voices around you can either rebuild your mindset or destroy it further. Human beings are deeply influenced by the emotional atmosphere they live in every single day. The conversations they hear, the energy they absorb, the people they trust, and the information they consume slowly shape their beliefs, confidence, habits, and emotional stability. Recovery is never only about personal willpower. It is also about the environment surrounding the mind during difficult seasons. Many people try to heal while remaining connected to the same negativity that damaged them in the first place. They continue listening to voices that constantly criticize, doubt, discourage, or emotionally drain them. Over time, those voices begin influencing identity. Negative environments slowly convince people they are weak, incapable, unworthy, or permanently broken. The danger is not always obvious because emotional damage often happens gradually. Small repeated comments, constant pessimism, unhealthy comparisons, and toxic energy quietly reshape the way people see themselves. Psychological studies repeatedly show that human behavior is strongly affected by social surroundings. Emotions spread through groups, attitudes become contagious, expectations influence performance. People tend to adapt to the standards and beliefs normalized within their environment. When someone spends enough time surrounded by hopelessness, fear, blame, or negativity, their thinking often becomes limited without them even noticing it. The brain constantly absorbs patterns from repeated exposure. Eventually, those patterns influence emotional responses, confidence, decision-making, and long-term resilience. That is why recovery requires protecting mental space with intention. A healing mind cannot grow inside an environment constantly feeding emotional chaos. People recovering emotionally need voices that encourage accountability without destroying hope. They need relationships that support growth instead of reinforcing self-doubt. They need conversations that remind them of possibility instead of permanently focusing on fear and failure. This does not mean avoiding reality or surrounding yourself only with comfort. Real growth still requires honesty, challenge, and discipline, but there is a difference between constructive pressure and destructive negativity. Constructive people challenge others to improve while still believing in their potential. Destructive people criticize without helping growth. One builds confidence through accountability. The other weakens confidence through constant emotional damage. The environment influencing recovery is not limited to people alone. Modern environments also include digital spaces, media consumption, routines, habits, and internal dialogue. A person spending hours consuming negativity online cannot expect emotional clarity afterward. Constant comparison creates insecurity. Endless bad news creates fear. Toxic entertainment normalizes dysfunction. Over time, the mind begins adapting to whatever it repeatedly consumes. Healthy environments create emotional stability because they reinforce better patterns of thinking. Encouraging conversations increase hope. Purpose-driven communities increase discipline. Positive role models expand belief about what is possible. Even simple changes in routine, organization, sleep, movement, and daily structure can significantly influence emotional recovery because the brain responds strongly to consistent patterns and surroundings. Many individuals underestimate how much language affects emotional identity. The words people hear repeatedly often become internal beliefs. Someone constantly hearing they are incapable may eventually stop trying altogether. Someone repeatedly reminded of their strength may slowly begin rebuilding confidence again. Language shapes perception, and perception shapes behavior. That is why supportive environments matter during difficult seasons. Encouragement does not remove pain, but it can restore the energy needed to continue moving forward. Some people must distance themselves from environments that continuously damage their peace. This can become one of the hardest parts of emotional recovery because familiar environments often feel emotionally comfortable even when unhealthy. Yet growth sometimes requires separation from relationships, routines, and influences that keep reinforcing old patterns. A person cannot fully rebuild while constantly surrounded by forces pulling them backward emotionally. Recovery becomes stronger when people intentionally choose environments aligned with growth, discipline, purpose, and emotional health. Healing accelerates when individuals surround themselves with people who inspire resilience instead of fear. Human beings naturally rise or fall toward the standards normalized around them. Strong environments create stronger thinking. Healthy environments create healthier emotional responses. Purpose-driven environments create greater clarity and direction. The voices surrounding a person during painful seasons often determine whether they rebuild or collapse further internally. Some voices awaken courage. Some voices deepen insecurity. Some voices remind people of their potential while others reinforce limitation. That is why protecting your environment is not weakness, it is wisdom. Because the mind eventually becomes shaped by whatever it repeatedly hears, repeatedly sees, and repeatedly allows into its emotional world. Emotional reset begins when you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me?" That single shift in perspective has the power to completely transform how a person experiences pain, failure, uncertainty, and personal struggle. Most people become emotionally trapped because they spend too much time searching for reasons to justify their suffering instead of searching for wisdom that can emerge from it. When the mind remains focused only on unfairness, disappointment grows heavier. But when the mind begins searching for lessons, growth becomes possible even during difficult seasons. Human beings naturally react emotionally when life does not go according to plan. Rejection feels personal. Failure feels humiliating. Unexpected setbacks create frustration and confusion. During those moments, many people immediately ask why they were chosen to experience hardship while others appear comfortable or successful. That question often leads towards self-pity, bitterness, and emotional paralysis because it positions the individual as powerless against circumstances. The more people repeat that mindset internally, the more trapped they become inside the emotional weight of the situation. The problem is not that pain exists. The problem is how pain is interpreted. Two individuals can experience similar hardships and emerge completely differently depending on the meaning they attach to the experience. One person becomes consumed by resentment while another develops resilience, wisdom, and emotional maturity. The external event may be similar, but the internal response changes everything. Perspective determines whether adversity becomes destruction or transformation. Psychological research consistently demonstrates that cognitive reframing plays a major role in emotional recovery and resilience. Individuals who view challenges as opportunities for learning often adapt more effectively to stress and hardship. Their minds remain focused on growth instead of permanent defeat. This does not eliminate emotional pain, but it changes the relationship they develop with it. Pain becomes information instead of identity. Failure becomes feedback instead of final judgment. Asking, "What is this teaching me?" creates emotional movement because it shifts attention toward growth. Suddenly, the struggle is no longer meaningless. The experience begins revealing patterns, habits, weaknesses, fears, and truths that may have remained hidden during comfortable seasons. Difficult moments often expose emotional dependence, unhealthy relationships, lack of discipline, fear of rejection, or misplaced priorities. Without hardship, many people would never recognize the internal changes necessary for long-term growth. Pain frequently becomes the greatest teacher because it forces awareness. Comfort rarely demands reflection. Comfortable people often remain unchanged for years because nothing pressures them to evolve. But adversity interrupts routine and forces deeper questions about identity, purpose, values, and direction. Emotional breakdowns often become turning points because they strip away distractions and reveal reality clearly. This mindset shift also restores personal responsibility. Asking, "Why is this happening to me?" often places all power outside the individual. Asking, "What is this teaching me?" restores the ability to respond intentionally. Even when circumstances cannot be controlled, growth remains possible through response. Human beings cannot always choose what happens to them, but they can choose the meaning they build from the experience. Some lessons learned through pain become life-changing. Rejection may teach self-worth independent of approval. Failure may teach preparation and patience. Loneliness may teach independence and emotional strength. Loss may teach gratitude and perspective. Uncertainty may teach resilience and adaptability. Every difficult season contains information capable of strengthening character if the individual remains willing to learn from it. This approach does not mean pretending suffering feels easy or enjoyable. Emotional honesty still matters, pain still hurts, disappointment still affects the mind and body, but emotionally strong people refuse to allow pain to become wasted experience. They search for understanding within the struggle instead of remaining emotionally trapped beneath it. That search for meaning often becomes the beginning of healing. The most powerful transformations in life rarely begin during perfect conditions. They often begin during confusion, heartbreak, pressure, failure, and uncertainty. Those moments challenge old beliefs and force internal growth that comfort could never create. Emotional reset begins when the struggle stops being viewed only as punishment and starts being viewed as preparation. The moment people begin learning from pain instead of only resisting it, adversity loses the power to completely break their spirit. The hardest seasons often reveal the strongest identity you were meant to become. Growth is born in pressure, not comfort. Human beings naturally seek comfort because comfort feels safe, predictable, and emotionally easy to manage. Yet comfort rarely creates transformation. Comfort protects current identity while pressure forces evolution. The moments that challenge emotional stability, confidence, patience, and endurance often become the same moments that reveal hidden strength, deeper purpose, and greater resilience. Most people do not discover who they truly are during easy seasons. They discover themselves when life becomes uncertain, when plans collapse, when failure arrives unexpectedly, when relationships change, when pressure increases beyond what feels manageable. Those moments remove distractions and expose character at its deepest level. Hardship reveals whether identity was built on temporary comfort or internal strength. Many individuals spend years believing they understand themselves until adversity tests them. Pressure exposes emotional habits that comfort kept hidden. It reveals insecurities, fears, emotional dependence, lack of discipline, and fragile thinking patterns. This process feels painful because identity often becomes attached to routines, achievements, approval, or external stability. When those things disappear, people feel lost internally. But losing an old identity is often necessary before a stronger one can emerge. Psychological resilience does not appear automatically during difficult moments. It develops through repeated exposure to challenge, combined with the decision to continue adapting instead of surrendering. Research consistently shows that individuals who overcome adversity often experience increased emotional strength, greater self-awareness, improved perspective, and deeper appreciation for purpose afterward. Hardship changes people because pressure forces the mind to evolve beyond previous limits. Growth requires resistance. Every meaningful form of development follows this principle. Muscles strengthen through resistance. Leadership develops through responsibility. Discipline forms through repetition under discomfort. Emotional endurance grows through facing uncertainty instead of avoiding it. Human beings become stronger by confronting pressure gradually and learning they are capable of surviving more than they once believed possible. Comfort creates temporary ease but often weakens long-term resilience. When people remain inside environments that never challenge them, they stop developing emotionally. They avoid risk. They avoid uncertainty. They avoid situations requiring courage or adaptation. Over time, this creates fragility because even small disruptions begin feeling overwhelming. Pressure, although uncomfortable, expands emotional capacity by forcing people to develop skills, habits, and perspectives necessary for survival and growth. Some of the strongest individuals carry strength that was built during seasons nobody saw. Strength developed through private battles, emotional exhaustion, rejection, sacrifice, loneliness, and uncertainty. Their resilience did not emerge because life was easy. It emerged because difficult experiences forced them to grow beyond emotional dependence on comfort. They learned how to remain focused while overwhelmed. They learned how to rebuild confidence after failure. They learned how to continue forward without guarantees. The hardest seasons often create identity shifts that would never happen during comfortable periods. People begin reevaluating priorities, relationships, habits, and beliefs. They stop living only for approval and begin searching for deeper meaning. They develop independence because struggle forces self-reliance. They develop discipline because pressure demands consistency. They develop perspective because suffering reveals what truly matters. Pressure also reveals hidden potential. Many people underestimate themselves until adversity demands more from them than they believed they could handle. During difficult seasons, human beings often discover levels of courage, patience, endurance, and adaptability they never knew existed. The situation becomes painful, but the growth becomes transformational. What once felt impossible gradually becomes manageable because pressure expanded internal capacity. This does not mean suffering should be glorified or intentionally sought. Pain alone does not automatically create wisdom. Growth comes from how individuals respond to pressure. Some allow hardship to create bitterness, while others allow hardship to develop resilience and clarity. The same difficult season can either weaken identity or strengthen it depending on mindset, response, and willingness to learn through discomfort. The strongest identity is rarely formed in moments of certainty and ease. It is often formed during seasons when nothing feels stable and the future remains unclear. Those seasons demand emotional courage. They demand perseverance without immediate reward. They demand faith in personal growth before visible results appear. And through that process, individuals slowly become stronger than the version of themselves that once depended entirely on comfort to feel secure.